Hey everybody, welcome to Cut the Fluff, the webinar series hosted by myself, Ash Brown, the founder and CEO of Empiraa. We've designed Cut the Fluff to basically cut the fluff around webinars and podcasts that actually just talk about things that actually matter, and not sit there with jargon and BS. And it's all about sort of branding this week, which is fantastic because we work with professional services across here in the US, and they all want to generate more work. They all want to have more enhanced branding. And to be honest, there's no better person to speak to than Mel. So, Mel, you want to introduce yourself and why you're the branding guru from my point of view?
I hate that word in terms of brand, but thank you, Ash, for having me. I'm super excited to be on Cut the Fluff. I think the concept and the conversation around branding is necessary in this day and age, and more important than ever when we specifically talk about personal branding rather than company branding. So really excited to be here. For those that don't know me or have never heard of me before, my name is Mel Yu. I'm from Melbourne, Australia. I have an events company called MCO Events. We're a national events agency servicing corporate event management, but also company branding and helping a brand activate their vision, mission, and community within an event experience. And so outside of that, I also do business consultancy and personal branding coaching specifically. So anyone that's looking to elevate their brand or get seen in the digital space, we kind of take your story and bring it out into reality online.
That's a good one. I'll start off on that one. How
Okay.
in the hell do you cut through with so much noise in the digital space now? So, like, you jump on LinkedIn, everyone's posting effectively the same crap, 5 threads to this is a thread, or these are the 5 things I've learned. All this Instagram saying you're unbelievable on Instagram. You've got this really authentic voice, which I think is amazing. If you haven't followed Mel on Instagram, do. But X, probably stay away from that. It's a bit of a cesspool. But how do you cut through? Like, we talk about cut the fluff, but how do you cut through in such a really noisy environment these days to sort of bring this authentic brand?
Love that. I love that. But I'm instantly going to shift your perspective just so that people then get
Perfect.
an understanding of my insight. Is it noisy? Is it saturated?
I think
Actually,
in some,
when is there
I think
another
in
app?
LinkedIn, no, there's probably not. There's probably only one of me, thank God. But yeah,
Well, that's kind of the idea that we operate out of a lens that we believe that everyone is one of one, which is true. Even a twin, right, has a different personality or different perspective or different thought on life. And so when I coach from that perspective, if I'm looking at someone that's only one of one, it's not that noisy at all. Because if we can extract the things that you've gone through and that you've lived and your frame of mind and your perspective on the world, there's actually a very unique perspective in that sense. Rather than seeing things from a competition, a saturated place, and a noisy market, if you
yeah,
can figure out your tone of voice and really speak to your ideal customer and the person that you're really trying to get across, that's why my brand's cutting through, because it's authentic, right?
yeah.
So can anyone's. I'm not a guru. I'm actually, I don't have the gift of the gab. I just happen to find something that works for me in my authenticity and my personality style and share it online. And what happens is, I think when the content is genuinely authentic, you can feel it. There's something about that energy every time we catch up, there's something about that uniqueness and that energy that we have that
Yep.
is pure, it's genuine, it's authentic. And that's where we say cut the fluff. It's not about, people come to us all the time and go, oh, I don't want to build my brand because it's a bit wanky. And it's like, are you wanky? But like, are you wanky? Because if you are, then obviously yeah, it might come across that way. But if you're not, why can't we just show more of you online?
It's funny you bring up that the wanky part, and it's so, and Ash and I, there's 2 Ashes in this business, so I'm not talking to myself, so I'm not that wanky. But one of the things that there's such a differentiator between Aussies and Americans, where Americans are very invested in their brand, they're very invested in their voice, where Australians, there's a very tall poppy syndrome around that. Like, if you're posting, it's only till you get to a certain level and they go, oh, actually, I want to hear from that person, but they don't want to hear. It's like a local band playing songs all the time, and it's not until they get to. Look, I use the example. This is a quick side, but I use the example of Jet. Remember the band Jet?
Yeah.
So that they grew up in Dingley, that sort of stuff. they could not get a gig anywhere in Melbourne. They went overseas. They went to the US. They played in Nashville. They got picked up. They got, was an A&M person picked them up, and Sony, and suddenly they're on iPod ads and they're playing, Super Bowl, all that sort of stuff. And then suddenly everyone's like, oh, let's put Jet on. Oh, are you going to be my girl? And suddenly Australia went, oh, these guys are great. It's like, well, 5 years ago, these guys couldn't get a gig at a local RSL, but yet now they've cracked America. Everyone wants to have them a part of it. It's such a cultural thing in Australia. Would you definitely agree with that?
Yeah, hit the nail on the head. And funnily enough, that exact story is something that I've lived through. I think when I was on the come up and I was grinding and I was working and showing everyone sort of that hustle and that journey, no one really cared. In fact, they probably, I'm not sure, people probably spoke about me behind my back and whatnot. It didn't really matter. But then the moment I did a interview with Mark Wahlberg, I went over to LA and I interviewed Mark Wahlberg. This was back in 2017. That particular post suddenly was almost like, oh, now she's kind of like cool because she's, hung out with Marky Mark, which ironically enough, like the higher tier in terms of the celebrity brand that we get to and the more influential they are, when you actually become quite close proximity to them, you realize they're just humans at the end of the day as well. So I'm really big on not pedestaling anyone, not myself, not you. We can have all of these titles, but really, how's the conversation? How are you as a human being? Because that's what I really care about. How genuine of a person are you? But especially in Australia, this term tall poppy syndrome, we've heard it before. We understand that there is a concept around this, and it is the way that our government's structured, the way that our systems are structured. We're very about the bell curve here in Australia. So, and what that means is if you're like too successful, we bring you back down to the medium line. And if you're in the poverty margins and things, we've got Centrelink and we've got healthcare and we've got government things to bring you back to the middle. So you're fully supported. Australia is called the lucky country because we are such a beautiful country that is all about the middle class. Everything that we're structured is around the middle class, the working class. Okay, so you need to understand where tall poppy comes from is, you're skewing a bit too high on this bell curve here. We need to bring you back to the middle. Whereas Americans, the history and the economy and the population density, there's way too many. The moment you step foot in the States and you're born from there, you almost got, they're born and bred to be themselves and be unique, because otherwise you'd fall into the masses and you just never would stand out. Whereas here, we're all about blending in. Everyone looks the same. Everyone dresses the same. Don't be too controversial. Don't be too eccentric. That's kind of how I see the economy play out in both those different countries.
And that's really interesting because we do a lot with the US, and one of the things I've noticed with the US is we've worked really hard on sort of having that really good brand. Like when I'm talking to companies, like asking for leads, and then they'll pass it over, and on the emails it's just like, hey, this guy's a really good guy, blah blah blah. Let's connect with him, and so we talk about this brand through line. It's sort of, and one thing I do notice, and with this, especially in the US versus Australia, when it comes to leads and referrals, Americans will actually pass leads on, and they will, if you build a really strong really strong rapport with them early, that they will actually go, okay, they'll do the 5 referrals per after each meeting. Where Australia, you find like, oh yeah, I'll get back to you. Oh yeah, I'll get there. Yeah. Oh yeah, I was going to email you. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, and so I think if you go back, where the point of where I'm going with this is, if you build your brand with them from day one, when you do the first meeting with them, then they start going, they want to invest in your brand. Where in Australia, there's always this standoffishness.
I think also we are a younger country, and there's always a joke around every industry is what Australians are 5 to 7 years behind to the rest of the world, not only in distance, but I think it's just European fashion, we're talking development, tech, innovation, everything. We're almost like this 5 to 7 years behind the rest of the world. And so I think we have an opportunity here, actually. So if you happen to be building a business in Australia or looking to build an entrepreneurial brand or a personal brand in Australia, I actually think the next 5 to 10 years at least, we've got a good run here where you can jump on this third wave. You can jump on this wave and actually start building your brand, but you have to start today. This word, you don't want it to just be like, oh, it's such a buzzword. Oh, everyone's talking about it. It's wanky, da, 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 da. And then 10 years later, you're like, I should have started 10 years ago. And so this is the conversation, like start hosting a webinar. Start building your presence. How do you become an authority in your space? How do you start being seen as credible? Because that's actually what we're talking about when we're talking about brand. Brand is about how much influence can you actually have on a particular message to inspire someone to take action. That is on a deeper level what branding is.
Yeah, and sort of probably going in, how do you make your first step? Like, and what sort of groundwork? Because at the end of the day, you're going to experiment with different forms. You're going to experiment with your voice. I know when I've posted, I've used ChatGPT and gone, well, that's ridiculous. And probably the number one rule I would measure that don't use ChatGPT unless you're going to use it to sort of clean up your grammar. But yeah, how do you go about it? Or maybe do use
Chat. So much deeper. It's actually so much deeper than just grammar. I actually find that people still have this perception that ChatGPT is a tool where we do correct our grammar and learn to write a little bit. But if you actually have a dialogue with it and build it, it can be a really good springboard, and it never lets you down because it's always responding. But that being said, going back to how do you start? Okay, so someone's come on here. They're like, oh, what's this branding crap? And then they're actually a bit interested. You're in that contemplative phase, and then you're looking to take action now. So my thing is, what is your message? It always starts with your why. Why do you even want to build a brand? What does that mean for you to build a brand? What is your message that you want to say? Okay, you've suddenly now got 10,000 people, all eyes on you. What are you going to say to them? You have to figure that out internally first, because I could give you the stage act right now. Or we can say, hey, you're going to go live on national television in the States, not even in Australia. Let's say in the States. So the population, all eyes on you, or the Super Bowl, go up there and you've got 10 minutes of showtime. If you haven't figured out what you would actually say to those 10 million, 10,000, whatever, 5 people, you don't actually know what your brand is. So that's where we come in and go, what's the message that you want to say? What is the message that we want to craft? And also, what do you want to be synonymously known for? And when I say that, it's the word or the industry where when your name pops up, we think of the other thing. So when people around talk about branding, I happen to be in those rooms when I'm not even in the room. That's the power of branding. Ash Brown goes, you should get Mel Yu. You should talk to Mel Yu about this. And that's because I've positioned myself as a branding expert. So what industry do you want to actually position yourself, and how can we get that word and you and your name closer together?
Yeah, I liken it to the barbecue test. Where if you're in a barbecue and you're sitting there having a few beers with your mates, and someone turns around and goes, hey, how you going? Oh, I've grown my business. How you grow your business? Well, we brought on Mel from Thingo. So it's in tech they call it product led growth and referrals and all that. But it all comes down to branding and personal branding. I think that people buy from people as well, and people invest in people before they invest in anything else.
And why do people buy from people? Ash, like, what is an actual... I've done so much work on this in terms of a lot of people want to build a brand to get a sale. And I'm like, all right, great. What is sales? What is actually sales? And when my mentor, my sales coach, broke it down, we did this workshop, and I was like, it means brand, it means product, it means messaging, it means all of this. But when you actually break down what a sale is trust and value met at any one point in time, right? You get a sale when there is trust and there's value provided at any given point in time. Sometimes if you only have one, you don't get the sale. It's like, oh, you provide a lot of value, but I don't really trust like your brand yet. No sale. Or I trust you heaps, but the product that you're selling is crap and there's no value for me in it, then you're not going to get the sale. But when you actually think about why people choose why they buy it as a consumer, it's likely because you trust the brand or the product or the thing that's going to give you what it is, and you value it. And so branding is about people doing business with people, but we're only going to do it if we trust, like, and know of you. And that's the power of branding. We trust you, we like you, and we know of you, so we can then refer you. It's very clear what it is that you provide and what service you bring. Now I'm going to give you work because I know that you're going to be the gun at that particular industry.
Yeah, and it's probably the other side of it too is I think that a lot of people, we live in an instant gratification world, and I think tell me if I'm wrong on this one, but when it comes to branding and these type of things and posts, right? So when you start posting anything, where it's on Instagram, LinkedIn, you might get 1 like, you might get 2 likes, and engagement scores really low. But you've just got to keep just turning up, and you got to keep and not be disheartened by it. So it'd be interesting to see, like, you've grown quite a great following on Instagram. How did you go about sort of breaking through that cycle of, okay, I've just got to keep posting, because there's so many people, I guarantee, that watching this going, all right, well, I want to work on my branding and I want to think, and then they give up after 5 posts because they're going, well, no one really pays attention to it anyway. I'm going to invest in this, not realizing that there's the bell curve, I suppose.
Absolutely. And branding compounds, right? The first time that you do it, the first time you put anything out, no one cares because no one trusts you or likes you or knows of you. And also, there's no actual consistency. There hasn't been a pairing of your brand with showing up yet. And for me, the way we mentor our clients as well is people come to us all the time about the vanity metric being the numbers, the engagement, the likes, all of that. And I'm like, why don't we ever talk about the value metric? Instead of going vanity and going wide, why don't we go deep and bring a ton of value? Because the Instagram following and the counts and the engagement is a direct proportion related to how much value you put into the marketplace. And I started showing up long before it was cool to show up. And now branding's come out, but I was posting circa 10 years ago, but because I was treating Instagram like a bit of a blog, like it was a very Dear Diary kind of methodology that I was doing. And there's always been a way that you put out your message, whether you're a writer or a speaker, there's always been a form of a platform. My platform in my day and age just happened to be Instagram, MySpace, Facebook as it was coming up. And now these platforms are changing and growing. And I've actually converted to quite a strong following on LinkedIn now, which has been brilliant. I'm repositioning my brand in the business space. So LinkedIn became a much more valuable tool for me, and converting my content over there. My content actually performs very well on LinkedIn because it is so jarring. Because LinkedIn traditionally, as you kind of mentioned at the start of the conversation, is all about these are my awards, these are my accolades, and look at me, I've got another promotion. Whereas when I started coming in with family, exercise, health, mental health kind of conversations on LinkedIn, people were gravitating towards it a lot more because it was cutting through the noise.
Yeah. I had the best term for LinkedIn ever, and I posted it. I took it down. LinkedIn is the OnlyFans for middle management, which I thought was the greatest term ever. But no, and that's probably the point. There is, so if you're at a consultancy firm and that you're trying to build a brand, that sort of create content on LinkedIn that you'd want to read that's authentic to you, and don't follow trends. Would that be probably a good way
100%,
of sort of?
because the trend's going to come and go. You can ride the wave of a trend, but what is your essence? Who are you when no one is watching? And also when you post, so when I post because I like it. I like me. Your like's extra, Ash. I don't need your like for me to feel fulfilled, because I'm creating content where when I'm on my deathbed or when I pass, hopefully there's enough impact and conversations there and legacy pieces there of all the pieces of work that I've contributed. It's not showy. And I think the moment that you kind of use AI tools like chat's only ever going to spit out a very generic prompt for you, which then makes you, again, if everyone's using that platform to create their five facts, 5 tips, my carousel, you're going to have the same insight. Now, it doesn't matter if you have the same insight, actually. You could be saying one thing, Ash, and I could be agreeing and saying the exact same message. The difference between personal branding is you're the messenger and I'm the messenger. So regardless, the message, although the same, comes out in 2 different ways, and people will gravitate towards Ash and people might gravitate towards Mel, because we're completely different people, but with the same values, message, and ethos. So it's okay that someone else next door is like said what they've said. We all know losing weight equals gym and eat less calories,
Yeah.
but a different person saying that impacts different people, and we need more messengers out there. We actually need more messengers to get to the goal.
It was actually another point that you brought up just before, and how you shifted from Instagram to LinkedIn. There's Alex Hormozy, which we're both a fan of. He said just go where your customers are and go where the money is. Effectively, go where the people, where your audience, where your buyers are. I think that's really important. I think that's really important. What sort of triggered you to go, okay, I'm posting this stuff on LinkedIn. Instagram has got a really good, good engagement, good, I'm getting good traction there, to actually sort of go, okay, well, actually, I move this to LinkedIn. And what are the trends? What's the things that you look for? Let's talk about vanity metrics, because I think it's bullshit too. I think when people think, oh, I got 200 likes on a post or whatever, like, who cares?
How much money I get people. Well, like, what's the impact that you actually had? Because the beautiful thing about LinkedIn is everyone's quite switched on LinkedIn. People will see a post, but they won't like it. They won't engage with it, but they'll see it. People are always watching. You have to understand, because they're so conscious of you. There's a beauty about LinkedIn, because if Ash Brown liked Mel Yu's post, all of Ash Brown's connections see Mel Yu's post, because that's how the algorithm's working over there. So some of the top CEOs, high-level executives, are watching everything, but consciously not liking a single thing. But the best part is when they sense that genuineness, what happens is a lot of my conversations and deals are done in the private DMs, are done because it is actually private. It's a one-to-one conversation. And then the better part is it can get off that platform and go to an email or go to a Zoom call or go to a coffee. So the ripple effect of it is quite profound. But just going back to your question, is my ethos on this is do one platform and do it well first. Because if you try to have this omnipresence, it's essential that, yes, you should be found wherever your customers are and make it easy, meet people where they're at. But you're also going to be stretched so thin if you're trying to create content on YouTube, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. Like, it's endless. Snapchat, like it's endless. But if you can just hone in and go deep on one platform, which is what I did. I started on Instagram. I grew a great community on Instagram and built that. But then when I recognized, hey, Mel Yu's also evolving and pivoting. Who I am when I started my Instagram page at 18, 19 is definitely not the Mel Yu that presents herself now at 34 years of age. And so my brand has evolved and the positioning needs to change. And so what's the 34-year-old Mel doing? She's matured. She's got a certain level of elegance and poise to her. She has a different target market. And so I needed to naturally move over to LinkedIn, because that is where my customers were, exactly what you said. But I nailed one platform first and then moved to the other as my brand grew. So for anyone listening to this, if you are a consultant or someone in corporate, definitely LinkedIn B2B would be where you should be positioned, because LinkedIn as well, you can search whoever you want on any company and it spits out the first people, second people, and all those different levels of connection. If you have a consumer-based product, Instagram's just always been a platform that historically grew from pretty pictures and pretty videos. So aesthetically, there's a really creative element of Instagram. And then if you're looking at a younger audience, that Gen Z, I would 100% say TikTok. But TikTok is not, TikTok is like FaceTime with your family. That's how I call it. Like, TikTok is very just the wild, wild west. The more organic, the more real you are, the more disheveled you are, the better it kind of almost performs. Whereas Instagram, for me, I still see it a little bit more curated. There is a bit more of that prettiness, highlight reel to that platform. But getting to know your audience, getting to know yourself, getting to know also where your mechanisms are. Do you love writing? Because if you love writing, LinkedIn is great for long blog posts and sharing an article. But if you love pretty pictures and creating video, then that's a platform for you. So it comes down to self-awareness. It comes down to what it is that you like doing.
No, it's interesting, because like my Instagram's a joke, so I'm not going to talk about that. But
the word is spells, Ash, so I wouldn't actually say that it's a joke unless you want it to be a joke.
Yeah, I just post memes. But my LinkedIn is definitely it's interesting because I find like when I post stuff on LinkedIn, I don't post anywhere near the level I used to anymore, and it's just a function of time and
Mhm.
also making sure that I've got something because there's a really interesting balance there. I actually started pulling myself up on LinkedIn because I noticed I was getting too salesy, and
Cool.
I was starting to go, oh, actually, I'm constantly promoting like this or that, and I went, oh, hang on a minute, like that would, as an audience, like would they really want to engage, not
Well, do
engage in it,
you,
but like, yeah, like it's like, oh, he's just selling shit again, like, you know what I mean?
but
But when
I
I
think it's
found,
okay to sell. I think it's okay to sell, Ash. I'm just sorry to interrupt you. I wanted to
no,
obviously
no,
get
go
this
for it.
in terms of, I don't, do you listen to any of Gary Vaynerchuk's content? Good old
Yeah,
Gary
yeah,
V.
yeah, he's good. Yeah, he's good, Gary
But
V.
it's this jab, 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 right hook. So the idea is give value, give
Mm.
value, give value, and then go for the sell. So if we look at that, 25% of your content should be sales because you've got
Mm.
something that you want to offer and you've got a value that you want to provide for your customer. 25% should be sales. But the other percent, the 75, you should be getting value and nurturing the customer.
That was the key there. I felt I was moving towards too much of like probably flip that completely. It was probably 75% sell, sell, sell. Because what I was noticing was when I actually wrote posts about just from a founder's point of view, like how difficult fundraising is and this sort of stuff, that the engagement, not, and I don't really care about numbers. I've never been a
Sure.
social person, right? But what I notice is when people would outreach, or I'd see someone at a function or whatever, they'd go, "Hey, I read your stuff about your revision." Like, there's a real authenticity towards what I did notice is talk about personal branding is when I was talking to people about fundraising that they're like, "Oh, we actually like investing in you because you're not going to speak out of your ass. You know, you're actually it's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, shit was bad. Shit went bad, and I think that sometimes people are scared to open up that to open up their vulnerability um, to the world because everyone, everything's glossy and everything is the Lego movie. Everything is awesome, right? And
Yeah.
so how would you what's your sort of tips around? So I'm a founder or a professional service, and I want to want to get my authenticity up, but I'm pretty scared about just opening up that sort of part of my life, if that makes sense. So, what's some tips around how to get past that vulnerability stage?
It's so interesting because like how we met was a mutual friend of ours, and I've met them through a entrepreneurial circle or clubhouse, which is called Club of United Business. And I remember sitting in one of these rooms, and we were talking about this exact conversation, and some of these high level executives, C suites, CEOs were like, vulnerability though is a sign of weakness. Is
Yeah,
kind of the conversation and the dialogue that they went on, and they were like they just couldn't comprehend why they would share their hard days and their hard seasons and their hardship. They because it was it just feels like almost that was the environment they grew up in. Men didn't show weakness, and men didn't really, explain that, hey, that was a failed attempt. And it is a dance because you're not going to go, well, that whole campaign sucked and these are all the clients that we sucked with. Like, it's
yep,
not so much that, but also creating content that is makes you human actually
yep,
makes you that much more approachable, because you don't want to be so hard to obtain that you alienate your customer or your community, that you're just so beyond any sort of humanness that you're just God's gift to life. And
yeah,
it's that swing of like, you can have authenticity and you also can keep your privacy. This is the other misconception about personal branding. Is personal
yeah,
branding, you can you choose what you want to put online. You're in full control and you can show
yep,
it. Some of the strongest personal brands don't show any of their family, because family is not a pillar of theirs that they necessarily want to put out there. Their children,
yep.
their stick mother, whatever it may be, they don't want to show that part of them. And I'm like, that's okay, because the brand that we build is one that's going to be sustainable but authentic to you. And you absolutely, you can keep certain elements private. You don't need to put everything out there.
No, no, you shouldn't. It's actually interesting. I reckon there's a difference. I worked in a corporate environment, hated it. Clearly, like I'm not
You're
built. I'm not
highly
built. I'm not,
unemployable now, Ash.
oh yeah, yeah, don't worry about that. I'll have to be a founder for life because otherwise I'd be on the dole. But what I did notice, and I do notice this because you sit there, if you're in a big management meeting or a boardroom meeting with all these people that got really impressive LinkedIn, and they won't show vulnerability because it's a shark eat shark world, right? A dog eat dog world. There's a bunch of sharks. But if you get a bunch of founders in a room, they don't give an F. They're just like, they'll talk about, like I'm part of Innovation Bay, which is a fantastic founder community. And the I won't go into the conversations that we have there because it's private, but it's so good to have that level of vulnerability and have that tribe and go, actually, you know what? These people are going through the same problem I'm having. So what it gives you that, you go back to that authenticity part where it allows that if you're a founder or you're a business owner or as we're talking to consultants, professional service advisory, it's actually, you can sort of say these things without worry about judgment, because at the end of the day, the other people that you really need to give a crap about is your customers and your stakeholders. You don't really need, you're not looking to go, I'm going to become the VP of this, or I'm going to become the general manager of this, because you're past that. And I think it takes a bit to get.
Yeah, and also no story that we've ever been inspired by. I've never heard one. Don't know, maybe you can challenge me on this, but I've never heard a story that's like, we won the lottery and it was so easy. And then we got home and we watched Married at First Sight. And then I lived the rest of my life successful. Like, no one wants to hear that. No one cares about that, because we love, it doesn't have to be a rags to riches story either. However, your greatest lessons come from your challenges, your failures, your misconceptions, your misunderstandings. All of that is what makes the story and the adventure so powerful.
Yeah, imagine if Rocky.
And there was no Rocky.
Yeah,
imagine.
He rocked up, had a fight, and won. It's like, okay, great. That's end of roll credits. Like it's insane. Like how people sit there and people are so scared to open up their vulnerability and open up their story, but yet you're right. They get inspired by movies like Rocky or Forrest Gump or whatever. Like these sort of things, and they go,
every single movie that you've ever watched has a hero's journey, because that is what it is. The hero's journey is they start somewhere, they go through the valley of despair, they go through the struggle, they lose someone, they see something that's super traumatizing, life-changing, and then they rise to hope. It's kind of what our stories are all about. No one just loves a linear path, because we say we do, but in fact, if you got there through a very linear path, just like that example where it's like, and you won the lottery and there was $10 million, you almost don't even know what to do with it. And there's statistics that show how a lot of people that win the lottery then end up back exactly where they are. But that's because they haven't found the financial literacy, but also they haven't actually understood the grit and the resilience that it takes to hold that and sustain that amount of money or whatever it may be.
Yeah. And they haven't, I hate to say they haven't earned it, because everyone's figured out, but they haven't
didn't earn it.
Well, they didn't. Yeah, they didn't. It's so true, because I see even like in my world, tech, people get funded, and then they go, oh, we got $20 million. Then 2 years later, oh, we've had to lay off 1,500 people, or had to lay off 150 people, because it's like, well, you haven't. And then I'll speak to some founders that are here, like, and one in particular, he's raised over 150 million. His past job, and he said to me, he goes, we're sort of in that 4 to 5 year part of our journey, and I said to him, I said, mate, we've now starting to really start to hit that sort of bell curve up, the rocket ship up, and I said, is this normal? He goes, it generally takes 4 to 5 years. He goes, it takes 4 to 5 years. He goes, people don't tell you that, and you've got to sit there, and the key is to stay in the game, and I think. If people were more vulnerable about that sort of stuff and more open about that sort of stuff on sort of social media, LinkedIn, and actually shared their journeys, that's why I like the podcast of How I Built This. That I think Guy Raz gets those stories out of people a lot, and you sort of sit there and go, they're the people I listen to. Like I'll sit there and listen to the Atlassian guys, and they're talking about sort of their job. They just wanted to just make sure that they had, 2 jobs. They just wanted to make sure they earned $100,000 a year between them, because then they can pay themselves. Now they're worth $25 billion each, but that's what it's all about, right? So, and you're going to have these situations. So, I think that authenticity about it.
Yeah, but it's also our responsibility, I feel, to tell people the truth, especially anyone that's gone through an entrepreneurial journey. Like, anyone that's telling you that entrepreneurship isn't just waking up every morning and eating glass is like lying, because it's the hardest thing ever. And if anyone wants to glamorize that it's all about Lambos and jets and stuff, like, I've yet to see the day of and even if should we get there, and when we get there, it's not
Yeah.
because it was just easy. The idea
No.
is that this is hard. Building a personal brand is hard. I'm not sitting here saying you're going to get virality and success overnight. It's exactly that. It's doing the work and showing up day in, day out, and showing up when nobody cares, and it's your mum and your dog liking it.
Yep. No, it's true. It's 100%. It's work in the dark effectively. Just keep working in the dark, and you don't worry about if someone's watching. Just keep
Yeah, with
showing up.
sheer blind faith that it's going to work out, which is just psychotic. Like, we're a bunch
Hard
of
work
crazy.
always hard work always wins out in the end. It's very rare that someone goes, "Oh, I lucked into $1 billion." It's like, well, no. You like, one of my good mates, he's got, and I worked with him for years. Um, they've got a very successful business, and I'll talk to him at times because typical business owner. He's like, far out. This is and he goes, mate. I remember we blew up a truck and we didn't have the money to pay for the engine, and we all had to put our credit cards together to. And now this company's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And he goes, that was 20 years ago. You sit there, go, everyone's gone through shit, and it's about how you actually sort of could form that story. I do have some questions before we wrap up, Mel. So, what are the common? There we go. What are the common mistakes people make while trying to build a personal brand? That's a really good one. I like that.
Thanks, Eric. Hope you're well. So glad to see you here, actually. Eric was one from my personal brand. So, what are some common mistakes? I think is thinking that it's a vanity metric. So, thinking it's a popularity contest, thinking that it's, oh, how can I go viral? I don't want people to get confused with it. Building a personal brand is not about becoming an influencer. That's a
Yeah.
very clear message. Building a personal brand is not, now I have to start showing everyone my workouts, and I have to show that I'm in the
Oh,
4 a.m. club, and I have to eat, acai bowls and my steak
oh,
and veggies. Like, that is
oh.
so far away from building a personal brand. So that's a common misconception, I think. And I think recognizing that, when we go back to this, is like, what do you want to be known for? Where can we build
Well,
authority in your brand? Where can we build credibility amongst what you're doing? And that's how we can start. So yeah, not having to start showing up and doing all this random stuff that's just so off brand.
Get ready with me as I have a 4 a.m. shower. I walk the dog in the rain, and I do 75 push-ups. It's like, mate, if you saw my morning routine, is just that getting a 45-year-old bloke out of bed just with a crowbar. Like,
So, like, just practice discernment. That get ready with me or a day in the life is probably one day in their life that was
yep.
scripted completely, jam-packed of their whole month in a day in their life. So just use discernment around what's on the
Yeah.
internet, because it's a joke.
Oh, that's good. I think we've got another. Eric's actually quite engaged. Actually, this is good. On LinkedIn, there is a feature from post called impressions. Would you consider impressions a better metric of building a personal brand compared to receiving likes? That's actually a really interesting one, because I've spoken to a few people about this, and I think we sort of touched on it earlier. So, what's your thoughts on that, Mel?
Yeah, a great question as well, Eric. But I think the impression stuff does actually count. So when I say vanity metric, I mean, yes, it's a metric, but at the end of the day, the data doesn't lie. So you do need to leverage the data and the numbers. So, like Ash, for example, when you started posting that authentic content, you recognized that the engagement was higher. But it wasn't just the engagement online, it was the engagement via qualitative data, with people
Yeah.
telling you at the barbecue or at a social event, hey, I'm loving your stuff. That means more eyes on you. And at the end of the day, when we're talking about building a personal brand, you can shout from the top of your lungs how good your product is, but if no one's listening, it falls upon deaf ears. So you actually do want a lot of the impressions. You want your content to be seen. You want your best stuff out there and getting engaged and having eyes on it. So I do think it's an important metric. All I'm saying is be unattached to the metric, because when you're detached and you love the content, it ironically performs better, and you'll be quite surprised.
Yeah, and you mentioned something just before about, "Oh, I wanna become viral, I wanna become viral." No one has ever become viral by aiming to become viral. Virali
Mm,
The Huck Tua chick
mm,
a year ago did not make that did not expect to become viral from a drunken comment in Nashville.
yep.
Some things just hit. They just
Mhm,
You can't plan them, they just hit. And I
mm.
think if you actually try to manufacture virility, then that's where you end up like some of these Twitch streamers that do dumb crap and then they end
And
up locked up.
what? It's like, again, when people go, "I wanna hit virality," I'm like, "Okay, great," 'cause we've hit virality on a lot of our personal branding clients', content, right? We do a lot of the production. So some of our clients, have received over 1.5 million views and engagement and shares, which is great. But then I'm like, "Then what? Did your life change?"
Mm,
And I always throw it back to them because I know. And they're like, "But nothing changed. I didn't become an overnight
mm,
celebrity," and all of that. The brand is much more important in that sense that how was the back end? How was the system? Did
mm.
people actually book in? Or were they all just taking the piss? They kept swiping and they forgot about you the next day. That's
Yeah,
virality. You're hot one minute,
every
completely forgotten the next.
yeah. No, I completely agree. We got a couple more questions. This one, Esther Nyack. Can a business be successful without attaching the CEO to it? That's a really interesting one, that actually, because it depends on. I think that depends on stage. The
Yeah.
business stage. Would you agree with that one, Mel, or am I completely off base?
No, no, no. I think we're in super alignment, Ash. Absolutely, a business can be successful, and absolutely, a business should be successful without
Yeah,
attaching a CEO to it. The business is a business. It needs to have a successful company brand, and it also, the number one thing is it has to be profitable, right?
yeah,
And it has to be sustainable on its own. Because when you're starting to look at an exit, the problem with a lot of businesses is if the personal brand is the only key driver to that business, very hard to sell, and we
yeah,
want to build businesses so that we can exit. Now, this is much more your field, but does the personal brand and the CEO or the operator enhance the company? Absolutely. Virgin as a standalone is a profitable, sustainable business. Does Richard Branson elevate the Virgin company? Absolutely. Does Jeff Bezos enhance it? Absolutely, with Amazon. Like
yeah.
there's personal brands and company brands, and they both need to be built simultaneously. Is kind of my answer to that.
Yeah, I completely. I think early stage. I think the CEO founder should be. You should be your biggest, cheerleader of the
You're the
business.
visionary.
100%.
You're the
Yeah,
visionary.
yeah, but then I think you got to get to that point where you can sort of do the Homer in the meme, just push back into the
Agree.
the bush a little bit and let the business stand on its own 2 feet. But in all honesty, I think all yeah, yeah, just but I think all businesses, in all honesty, should the CEO or the founder should actually put themselves. And this is something that this is probably touches on something different. They should make themselves unemployable to their own business. They should be
Mhm.
able to build a systems and everything around the business to go, I don't need to be in the business 24/7. I don't need to be the one shouting from the rooftop 24/7 because I've been able to build this incredible business. It's because you talk about personal branding, because personal branding is not just external, it's about internal as well. So you'd be able to attract better talent, be able to keep better talent, be able to engage them and be able to have rally that talent to really become buyers in on what your vision of the business is, and they will they'll be more invested in the vision and be able to sort of go the extra mile and be able to do the things when shit's tough. You want your team to be invested. So I think thinking about your personal branding a little bit is not just external but internal. How do you interact with your team, and how do you lead them as well? But that's a whole other story for another day.
And yeah, and the association ends up rubbing off. So like eventually the company brand will have your personal brand so strongly intertwined, but it doesn't, it becomes a separate thing. It's a completely separate strategy. So, and I'll use an example because currently I actually just took a flight this morning, and it's like I only fly with Virgin. And that's not because like it's a thing that I've just attached sort of the personal branding values of Richard Branson and his entrepreneurial journey. And I really love his story and how,
Yeah.
you know, he thinks. And so I fly with Virgin, but I don't expect Virgin to be run, especially Virgin Australia or anything. Like I don't expect to see Richard or, he's so far away from the company. There's so many other people, but the ethos and the values and all of those kind of tangible metrics of the culture is
Yep.
instilled in the company.
Yep. No, I completely agree. And you see that like people don't want to deal with Qantas for different reasons because of the history of that. And I shouldn't, but I'm pretty basic either way. My daughter actually works for Qantas, so I probably shouldn't say too much.
Love.
But
Yeah.
we've got a couple more and we'll wrap up. Do you know a few good books that can teach you more about personal branding or marketing? Well, I actually know a person that's actually very good at it if you want to speak to her directly. But
Mel Yu.
but yeah. What good books have you got there, Mel?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to give a shout out to Dane Walker, who is the owner of Rival Agency up here in Sydney, actually. And Dane does a bunch of amazing content here in Australia, but he's also got a book on how to build a brand in 90 days. And I think it's just simple, it's easy. He uses very direct language. So that's one that I think specifically for building a brand, a personal brand, check that out. So his name's Dain, Dane Walker.
Perfect. Yeah. And how to build anything in 90 days is always great. Except for that movie. What was it? How to Lose a Man in 90 Days. That was a crap movie.
No, that's How to Lose a Man in 10 days.
Oh,
10.
Well, and we've got one more question.
Little sprint, by the way, just on that metric on why people say 90. It takes roughly 90 days to, start a habit, build consistency. It's a good quarter. There's a lot of actual association around that 3-month mark.
Oh, yeah, perfect. And the last one here is, what is the best way to get your business plan evaluated to get it to that point? So, which point? Yeah, on that one, I'd imagine that's regarding having you sort of be able to step back a bit from the business. And so I think the best way to do that is also have that vision. And this is probably where Empiraa, this is our sort of jam, I suppose. Being a strategy execution platform, is to have that vision to build over the next 12, 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, and have that as an objective that, okay, we want to start setting it up. So I'm not just the key voice. So I want to get to profitability. If we get to profitability, that means we can start investing in more team members, where it's a general manager, a COO, CFO, head of sales, head of culture, that type of stuff. So it's about sort of planning out, okay, well, what's your North Star? And then start reverse engineering that and actually going, okay, well, this will allow us to get to that point, which, because a lot of people start businesses, like no one really starts a business to sit there and go, you know what I'm looking forward to? Just dealing with the ATO, dealing with this, dealing with that. It's like they start it because they want to get to a bit of an end state, and whatever that end state for that person is, that's completely up to them. And so many people have different ones. So I think that's probably the way to do it. Start there, work your way back. But it goes back to, and then if you want to get to that, I think, full circle moment, investing in your brand early on, I think is really, really important, because it will allow you to have better customers, better staff, better investors, better experience across the board, and far more authentic.
And from a marketing branding perspective on that side, so if we look at digital presence and how you're showing up, or how the brand is moving in the marketplace, is if it was built on very strong founder-led foundations, and so with solopreneurs, obviously it's just us and the business. So very much so when we were mentioning in our early infancy, of course it's you going out and pushing and driving and being that visionary. And then you'll notice as you start building a team underneath you, and as you get to a bit more of a medium tier business, or you've done a few seasons of the business, what you can do from a marketing perspective is you slowly start tapering off you as the voice message, and bringing in your team, showing other faces within the community, or your customer within the community. Over time, the brand actually starts being transferred into all these other different faces. So then no longer is it so heavily and strongly on this founder, because you've now got CMOs, you've got COOs, you've got CTOs, you've got different executive teams that might come in and build the brand with you. And especially on a platform like LinkedIn, they're all going to have their own personal brands. I encourage everyone within the team to actually build the personal brand within the company brand. And that's where you're going to be able to taper off. I'm doing the exact same thing at the moment just with my personal lived MCO stands for Melissa and Company. So my very name is within sort of the company brand, but I always almost knew it had to be MCO because it was never just going to be me. But as I personally, Mel Yu, navigates into potentially motherhood soon or going a bit more with the family focus, it means that MCO still needs to be a standalone, but I start introducing my teams. I start introducing my operator, and I'm constantly talking about other people running the business so that I can then taper off and do other things.
No, that makes complete sense. Mel, this has been absolutely brilliant. Great chat, which I knew it would be. I did not doubt it 1 second. Where's the best place to find Mel Yu on Insta, LinkedIn, and on the web?
Yeah, so Instagram is Mel Yu, Mellieyu. I'm active on all platforms, and LinkedIn is Mel Yu, so search me up there. And then melu.au for all of my business coaching, personal branding sort of services. But I also wanted to thank you, Ash, for giving me a platform to share today, but also all the questions and all of you guys for tuning in. You could have been anywhere else for a live, but if you're here for the live, I greatly appreciate it. And those questions were great.
Yeah, and Empiraa is EMPIRAA, because everyone that says, where do you spell it? And like that's how you spell it. And this will be available on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and everything else. So you'll be able to find us anywhere. If you've got any questions, if you're in professional services and you're looking to get real-time visibility across your client strategy and be able to white label your product and productize your services and offering, talk to us. We can help you out. We're helping out over 1,300 companies at the moment, over 100 consultants. So feel free to reach out to us, and I'm sure we can help you out. So thanks once again, Mel. It's been a fantastic chat. Knew it would be, and I think we need to do this again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, mate.